One night, the phones at Kensington Palace rang. On the line was the last person the royal family would have expected, Michael Jackson. Princess Diana answered the call. They talked for 2 hours, about the price of fame, the difficulty of protecting their children, and the profound sense of loneliness felt even while being adored by millions. This is the little-known story of a friendship between two legends from different worlds, fighting the same battle in fame's golden cage. If these kinds of stories catch your attention, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Where are you watching us from right now? Let us know in the comments below. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, two figures stood at the absolute pinnacle of global celebrity. Princess Diana, the beautiful, compassionate royal whose fairy tale marriage had captivated the world before publicly unraveling. And Michael Jackson, the musical genius whose Thriller album had shattered all records and transformed him into the biggest star on the planet. On the surface, they inhabited entirely different realms, she in the ancient traditions of the British monarchy, he in the flashy world of American entertainment. Yet beneath these apparent differences lay striking similarities that would form the foundation of an unlikely friendship. Both had been thrust into the global spotlight at a young age, Diana at 19 when her engagement to Prince Charles was announced, Jackson even earlier as the child star of the Jackson 5. Both found themselves defined by public personas that were simultaneously empowering and constraining. And both experienced the peculiar isolation that comes with being watched by everyone but truly known by very few. The parallels in their life experiences ran even deeper than most people realized. Both had navigated complicated childhoods, Diana's marked by her parents' bitter divorce when she was 7, Jackson's by the relentless pressure of performing and his complex relationship with a demanding father. Both had developed an intense relationship with the media, alternately using it to further their causes and feeling victimized by its intrusions. And both had turned to advocacy for children and the disadvantaged as an expression of their genuine compassion and perhaps as a way to create meaning beyond their celebrity. They were like mirrors of each other in different worlds, observed Wayne Robson, who worked on Jackson's security detail during his European tours in the early 1990s. Both of them so famous they couldn't go anywhere without causing a commotion, both of them haunted by aspects of their childhoods, both of them trying to use their fame to do something meaningful. Their first meeting came in July 1988, before Jackson's concert at Wembley Stadium during his Bad World Tour. Prince Charles and Princess Diana attended the show as part of a charity event, and a brief backstage introduction was arranged. Photos from that evening show a seemingly routine royal meet and greet, with Diana elegant in a white dress with structured shoulders, Charles in a traditional suit, and Jackson in one of his iconic military-inspired performance costumes. But according to those present, there was something electric about the brief interaction between Diana and Jackson, a moment of unexpected connection as they shook hands and exchanged pleasantries. You could see something pass between them, recalled Matt Forger, a sound engineer on the tour who witnessed the meeting. It wasn't flirtatious or anything like that. It was more like recognition, like two people who instantly understood something about each other that the rest of us couldn't grasp. This momentary connection might have remained just that, a fleeting encounter between two famous figures, had it not been for what happened several months later. In late 1988, as Diana was navigating the increasingly troubled waters of her marriage and the constraints of royal life, she reached out to Jackson through an unexpected channel. Her lady-in-waiting, Anne Beckwith Smith, contacted Jackson's team to convey that the princess had greatly enjoyed his concert and was wondering if he might send signed memorabilia for her young sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. Jackson, known for his love of children and his generosity with fans, went beyond the simple request. Not only did he send signed albums and merchandise, but he also included a handwritten note to Diana thanking her for attending his show and expressing his admiration for her charity work, particularly with children. This exchange opened a private channel of communication that would develop into one of the most unusual and closely guarded friendships in either of their lives. According to Jackson's former personal assistant, Frank Caschio, who later wrote about the relationship in his memoir, the initial correspondence soon gave way to occasional phone calls. Michael was as nervous as a teenager before calling her the first time, Cascio wrote. He kept asking me if it was proper protocol, if he should use certain formal terms to address her. But from what he told me afterward, once they started talking, all that formality melted away. Those initial calls revealed startling parallels in their experiences despite the vastly different worlds they inhabited. Both were struggling with the suffocating nature of fame and the constant invasion of privacy. Both felt misrepresented by the media and misunderstood by the public. And perhaps most poignantly, both were trying to create some semblance of normalcy for their children in the most abnormal of circumstances. I think they recognized in each other the unique burden of a level of fame that few humans have ever experienced, observed royal biographer Andrew Morton, who wrote the groundbreaking book, Diana, Her True Story. There was no need to explain or justify their feelings to each other. They just knew. This mutual understanding was particularly valuable because both Diana and Jackson were experiencing profound transitions in their public images during this period. Diana was evolving from the shy of her early royal years into a more confident, independent figure increasingly at odds with the royal establishment. Jackson was moving from the universal adulation of the thriller era into the more controversial phase of his career, marked by changing physical appearance and escalating media scrutiny. They were both in the process of breaking free from the images that had been constructed for them, explained celebrity culture expert Dr. Ellis Cashmore. Diana was pushing against the constraints of her royal role, and Michael was pushing against the limitations of being just a pop star. Both were trying to define themselves on their own terms while dealing with enormous resistance. Their growing friendship remained largely hidden from public view, conducted through phone calls, private messages, and occasional carefully arranged meetings. This secrecy was necessitated by the intense scrutiny both faced and the potential for misinterpretation if their connection became tabloid fodder. By 1992, as Diana's marriage to Charles was publicly disintegrating and Jackson was launching his Dangerous album amid growing scrutiny of his increasingly eccentric behavior, their phone conversations had become more frequent, sometimes lasting hours and often taking place late at night due to the time difference between London and Los Angeles. The content of these calls remained largely private, but those close to both Diana and Jackson have confirmed that they served as a rare outlet where each could speak freely about the pressures they faced, without fear of judgment or betrayal. Diana trusted Michael in a way she trusted very few people, revealed one former palace staff member who requested anonymity. She knew he wouldn't leak their conversations to the press, because he understood better than anyone the value of privacy when you have so little of it. Similarly, Jackson, who had become increasingly isolated and suspicious as his fame reached stratospheric levels, found in Diana someone who could relate to his unique circumstances without an agenda. She was one of the few people who Michael felt wasn't trying to get something from him, said Karen Fay, Jackson's longtime makeup artist and confidant. They were equals in a strange way, both trapped in these gilded cages that the rest of the world thought were so desirable. One particular aspect of fame that they bonded over was the experience of having their most mundane actions and choices scrutinized and often criticized. Diana once confided to Jackson how she'd been reprimanded for her choice of dress at an event, while on the same day, a speech she'd given about an important charitable cause had been largely ignored by the press. Jackson, in turn, shared his frustration at how his artistic choices were constantly overshadowed by speculation about his personal life. They had this running joke between them, revealed one source close to Jackson. They'd ask each other, "What impossible standard did you fail to meet today?" It was their way of coping with the relentless criticism they both faced. Another significant parallel was their complex relationship with their public image. Both understood the power of imagery and had worked with photographers to create iconic moments, Diana with her carefully arranged charity photo opportunities, Jackson with his groundbreaking music videos. Yet both also felt trapped and distorted by the images that had been created around them, unable to fully control the narrative of their own lives. In many ways, they were both prisoners of their own mythology, noted cultural historian Dr. Rebecca Johnson. The very images that gave them their power also limited their freedom. They were expected to remain static symbols rather than evolving human beings. Their friendship deepened in 1995, when Jackson was preparing for the release of his History album and Diana was navigating the aftermath of her controversial BBC Panorama interview, in which she had spoken candidly about her failed marriage and struggles within the royal family. During this period of intense media scrutiny for both, their conversations became a crucial source of support and understanding. According to multiple sources, it was during one late-night call in this period that Jackson first proposed the idea of Diana and her sons visiting his Neverland ranch in California. His invitation was not merely social but practical. Neverland, with its elaborate security systems and remote location, offered something Diana desperately craved: privacy. Michael understood Diana's concern for her son's privacy in a way few others could, explained a former member of Jackson's staff who was aware of the invitation. Neverland wasn't just an amusement park, it was a sanctuary he had created where he could control access and provide a normal experience in an abnormal life. He wanted to offer that to Diana and her boys. The visit never materialized due to the logistical and security complications of a royal visit, but the invitation itself highlighted another key aspect of their connection: concern for their children's well-being in the harsh glare of the spotlight. They spoke a lot about how to give their kids some semblance of normalcy, revealed one source close to Jackson. Michael created Neverland partly as a place where children, including his own, could experience the childhood he felt he'd been denied. Diana was doing something similar in her own way, trying to expose William and Harry to experiences outside the royal bubble. This shared dedication to their children was evident in the advice they exchanged. Jackson reportedly counseled Diana on dealing with paparazzi around her sons, sharing tactics he had developed over years of navigating extreme media attention. Diana, in turn, offered perspective on raising children under intense public scrutiny while trying to instill values beyond fame and privilege. Both of them were determined that their children wouldn't suffer the way they had, said one confidant familiar with their conversations. Diana wanted her sons to understand normal life despite being royals, and Michael wanted his children to have the childhood he never had. They compared notes on how to create bubbles of normalcy in their extraordinarily abnormal circumstances. While much of their friendship played out through phone calls and private correspondence, they did manage a few in-person meetings that remained largely unknown to the public at the time. One such meeting reportedly occurred in 1993 during Jackson's Dangerous World Tour. While performing in London, Jackson arranged a private meeting with Diana at Harrods department store after hours, facilitated by its then-owner Mohammed Al-Fayed, who would later become linked to Diana through his son Dodi. According to accounts from security personnel present, the two spent over an hour in conversation in a cordoned-off section of the store, with minimal staff and security around them. They were like old friends catching up, recalled one security officer who was present. Very animated conversation, lots of laughter. You'd never have guessed they came from such different worlds. This meeting at Harrods had been carefully orchestrated to ensure privacy. According to insiders, the store was closed early under the pretext of inventory, and only a skeletal staff remained, all sworn to confidentiality. Diana arrived through a service entrance, while Jackson came after his evening performance, still wearing stage makeup but changed into more casual clothes. What struck me was how relaxed they both were, said the security officer. These were two people who could never let their guard down in public, but together, they seemed to exhale. They were just two people sharing stories and laughing, not icons performing the roles the world had assigned them. Another meeting took place in 1995, when Diana made a discreet visit to the hotel where Jackson was staying during a promotional visit to London. This encounter was particularly significant as it came during a period of intense crisis for both. Jackson was dealing with the aftermath of child abuse allegations, which he vehemently denied and which resulted in no criminal charges, while Diana was navigating the fallout from the collapse of her marriage and her increasingly strained relationship with the royal establishment. That they would risk meeting at such a vulnerable time for both of them speaks to how important the friendship had become, noted royal commentator Richard K. They were both at low points and finding tremendous comfort in someone who truly understood the pressures they were under. This meeting was arranged with extraordinary security precautions. Diana arrived in an unmarked car, entering through the hotel's service area. Jackson's suite had been booked under a pseudonym, and the hotel staff were told he was receiving a visit from a high-profile business associate. Only a handful of people from their respective inner circles knew about the meeting. They spent nearly 3 hours together, revealed one source familiar with the encounter. It wasn't about publicity or photo opportunities. It was two people who needed someone to talk to who could truly understand their unique situations. What made their connection particularly valuable was its rarity in both their lives. As their fame reached unprecedented levels, both Diana and Jackson found themselves increasingly isolated, surrounded by staff, security, and hangers-on, but with precious few genuine friendships based on mutual understanding rather than self-interest. When you reach that level of fame, everyone wants something from you, explained J. Randy Taraborelli, a biographer who has written extensively about both Jackson and Diana. Finding someone who wants nothing more than understanding and companionship becomes almost impossible. For both of them, this friendship offered that rare thing, a relationship with no agenda beyond mutual support. Their conversations often centered on the bizarre realities of their lives, experiences so unusual that few others could relate. They discussed the surreal nature of having their faces on magazines worldwide, of being unable to perform the simplest tasks like shopping or taking a walk without elaborate security arrangements, and of the strange dichotomy of being intensely loved by millions yet deeply lonely on a personal level. Diana once told Michael about trying to take her sons for ice cream like a normal mother, only to have the shop mobbed within minutes, recounted one royal aide. Michael shared a similar story about attempting to visit a children's hospital anonymously, only to cause a near riot when he was recognized. They found these situations simultaneously absurd and painful, the inability to do normal human things without causing chaos. They also shared strategies for handling the relentless media attention. Jackson, who had been in the public eye since childhood, had developed elaborate methods for maintaining some degree of privacy, including disguises, decoy vehicles, and careful management of his public appearances. Diana, though more recently thrust into the spotlight, had become adept at working with select journalists to shape her narrative while protecting her core privacy. They learned from each other in that regard, said one former member of Diana's security team. Michael had more experience with extreme fame, but Diana had a natural political instinct for managing public perception that he admired. They traded techniques like professionals sharing trade secrets. One particular strategy they reportedly discussed was the use of calculated public appearances to satisfy media demand while preserving true privacy for matters they considered important. Both understood that a complete withdrawal from public view only intensified interest, while strategic visibility could paradoxically provide cover for their private lives. Michael advised Diana on what he called feeding the beast, revealed one insider. The idea that you give the media carefully chosen glimpses of your life to satisfy their appetite, while keeping your genuine self and your most meaningful relationships completely separate and protected. By 1996, both Jackson and Diana were facing pivotal transitions in their lives. Diana's divorce from Prince Charles was finalized, officially removing her from the royal family though not from public fascination. Jackson was embarking on new projects while continuing to battle the public perception issues that had emerged from the 1993 allegations. During this period, according to those close to both, their friendship provided crucial emotional support as they navigated these challenges. Their late-night phone calls continued, sometimes focusing on practical matters, security concerns, media strategies, protecting their children, and sometimes delving into more personal territory. Diana was one of the few people who could make Michael laugh during some of his darkest periods, recalled one of Jackson's associates. And he provided something she desperately needed, someone who understood the reality of living under constant scrutiny without being part of the royal ecosystem with all its agendas and politics. One particularly meaningful exchange occurred after Diana's BBC Panorama interview in November 1995, in which she had spoken with unprecedented candor about her marriage, the royal family's treatment of her, and her struggles with bulimia and depression. The interview sent shockwaves through the British establishment and effectively sealed the end of her marriage to Charles. According to those close to both, Jackson called Diana shortly after the broadcast aired. He told her he was proud of her courage in speaking her truth, said one source familiar with the conversation. He understood what it meant to break from the script that had been written for you, to refuse to play the role assigned by others any longer. For both of them, authenticity came at an enormous cost, but both had reached points in their lives where they couldn't continue the performance. Similarly, Diana provided support to Jackson during his History album release, which represented his artistic response to the allegations and media scrutiny he had faced. The album's themes of persecution, media distortion, and the search for understanding resonated with Diana's own experiences. She understood what he was expressing in songs like "Scream" and "They Don't Care About Us" on a very personal level, said one music industry executive who worked on the album's promotion. When many people were backing away from Michael, Diana privately expressed her support and understanding of what he was trying to communicate through his art. Their friendship was conducted with extreme discretion, with both sides understanding the media frenzy that would erupt if it became widely known. Only a small circle of trusted aides and friends were aware of their regular communications. This privacy was not merely about avoiding headlines, but about preserving the authenticity of a connection that existed outside the performative aspects of both their public lives. For both of them, almost every relationship had some element of performance to it, observed Morton. With each other, they could drop the mask because they both understood the mask. That's incredibly rare when you live the kind of life they did. They also shared a certain wry humor about the absurdities of their circumstances. According to those familiar with their conversations, they would sometimes compare the wildest tabloid stories written about them, finding cathartic laughter in the sheer ridiculousness of some of the claims. They had a game they played, recalled one confidant. They'd ask each other, "What's the most absurd thing you've read about yourself this week?" It was their way of processing the constant stream of fiction presented as fact in their lives. Beyond their shared experiences of fame, Diana and Jackson also connected through their humanitarian work. Both were deeply committed to using their profiles to highlight causes they cared about, particularly those involving children, medical care, and disadvantaged communities. They exchanged ideas about how to maximize their impact and navigate the complexity of celebrity charity work. They both understood that their presence could bring crucial attention to important causes, but could also sometimes overshadow the cause itself, explained one charity executive who worked with both of them on separate projects. They shared strategies for how to use their fame effectively without making it about themselves. Both were genuinely committed to making a difference, not just being seen to make a difference. This shared commitment to humanitarian causes formed another layer of their connection. Despite the vastly different worlds they inhabited, both had chosen to use their extraordinary platforms to advocate for the vulnerable, Diana through her groundbreaking work with AIDS patients and anti-landmine advocacy, Jackson through his Heal the World Foundation and numerous charitable donations and visits to children's hospitals worldwide. They were both naturally empathetic people whose fame gave them unusual power to direct attention to issues they cared about, noted the charity executive. That was another level of understanding between them, the sense of responsibility that came with their platforms, and the desire to create meaning beyond celebrity. Tragically, their friendship was cut short by Diana's death in August 1997. Jackson was in New York when he received news of the car crash in Paris that claimed her life. According to several accounts, he collapsed upon hearing the news and was inconsolable for days afterward. He immediately cancelled several scheduled appearances and retreated from the public eye to mourn privately. His grief was compounded by the media spectacle surrounding her death, a brutal confirmation of many conversations he had shared with Diana about the dangerous intrusiveness of the press. The paparazzi pursuit that contributed to the fatal crash in Paris embodied the very dangers they had discussed during their late-night calls. Michael was devastated on multiple levels, said one close associate who was with him when he received the news. Beyond losing someone he cared about deeply, there was this horrible sense that their conversations about media intrusion had proven prophetic in the worst possible way. It affected him deeply and darkened his already complicated relationship with fame and the media. Jackson's statement following her death was brief and subdued compared to the effusive public tributes offered by many celebrities. "I am devastated by the loss of my friend," it read in part. "The world has lost an angel." Those who knew about their friendship recognized in this restraint a final act of respect for the privacy they had guarded so carefully. In a move that surprised many but made perfect sense to those aware of their connection, Jackson attended Diana's funeral at Westminster Abbey on September 6, 1997. Though he did not feature prominently in the media coverage, his presence, solemn and uncharacteristically understated, was a final tribute to a friendship few had known about. "He was determined to be there, but equally determined not to make his presence about himself," said one person involved in the funeral arrangements. "He declined VIP seating and special treatment. He wanted to honor her as a friend, not as a celebrity paying tribute to another celebrity." In the years following Diana's death, Jackson occasionally made reference to their friendship, though always in measured terms that revealed little of its depth. During a 2003 interview with Martin Bashir, who had also conducted Diana's famous Panorama interview, Jackson briefly mentioned Diana, describing her as very kind, very loving, very sweet. What he didn't publicly share was how profoundly her death had affected him, and how many of their conversations had eerily foreshadowed the circumstances of her passing. According to those close to Jackson, Diana's death intensified his own fears about media intrusion and contributed to his increasingly reclusive lifestyle in his final years. After Diana died, Michael would sometimes say, "That could have been me," revealed one longtime associate. He saw how the same media machine that had built her up had chased her to her death. It confirmed his worst fears about fame. In a poignant epilogue to their friendship, Jackson reportedly maintained occasional contact with Diana's sons in the years following her death. While these communications were kept extremely private, those close to Jackson confirmed that he sent supportive messages to the young princes, particularly as they entered their teen years and began to face increased media attention themselves. He felt a responsibility to continue what he and Diana had often discussed, trying to protect her boys from the worst aspects of fame and media scrutiny, said one source. He never publicized this connection or tried to use it in any way. It was a private extension of his friendship with their mother. The friendship between Michael Jackson and Princess Diana offers a fascinating glimpse into the rarefied world of extreme celebrity, a place few humans have ever inhabited and even fewer have successfully navigated. Their connection, built on mutual understanding of their unique circumstances, provided both with something essential that was otherwise missing from their lives, the simple knowledge that someone else truly understood. In many ways, their friendship serves as a poignant reminder of the human beings behind the iconic images, two individuals trying to fulfill extraordinary public roles while maintaining some semblance of a private self. In each other, they found a rare peer who could comprehend the peculiar burdens and contradictions of a life lived in the global spotlight. They were both fundamentally lonely people, surrounded constantly by crowds, reflected Tara Borelli. In each other, they found someone who understood that paradox without needing to have it explained. Their relationship also highlights the universal human need for authentic connection, regardless of status or circumstance. Despite their extraordinary lives, both Diana and Jackson sought what all people seek, to be understood, accepted, and valued for who they truly are rather than the roles they play or the projections others place upon them. Perhaps most poignantly, their friendship illuminates the often invisible costs of fame at its most extreme, the isolation, the loss of privacy, the constant scrutiny, and the erosion of trust that comes with living life as a global icon. In finding each other, Diana and Jackson created a small space of normalcy and understanding in lives that were anything but normal. Fame is a prison that everyone wants to enter but no one understands until they're inside, Jackson once said. Both he and Diana had entered that prison, and in their unlikely friendship, they found a way to occasionally escape its confines, if only through the simple act of being understood by someone who shared the experience. As we look back on these two remarkable lives, both cut short too soon, their unlikely friendship reveals an essential truth about fame at its most extreme level, that it creates experiences so unusual and isolating that only others within that same rarefied atmosphere can truly understand. In finding each other across the vast divides of geography, culture, and background, Michael Jackson and Princess Diana created a small but vital space of genuine connection in lives otherwise defined by public performance and private solitude. Their friendship, conducted largely through late-night phone calls and rare, carefully guarded meetings, offers a touching reminder of the basic human need for understanding, a need that persists even at the dizzying heights of global fame where they both dwelled, separately but similarly, in their respective gilded cages.